Hey y'all, it's Miss Brett here. Today I'm going to take you through the steps to build a body paragraph. Now, with these skills this unit, we are going to basically be building the full essay eventually, which we started off last unit with the introduction paragraph. So with the introduction paragraph, we have our context, we have our thesis with 3 subpoints. Well, each of those 3 subpoints is going to have its own body paragraph, and I'm going to take you through the steps onto how to create a body paragraph for an AP US History essay. Now, with this being said, we are going to be using page 1 of your writing guide. Page 1 of your writing guide has an introduction paragraph that we're going to use today in this video. And then you are going to be responsible for writing 1 body paragraph from that introduction. And I'm going to show you which one that you will be required to do. So let's first talk about what goes in a body paragraph, the requirements for a body paragraph. So first, a body paragraph consists of 1 topic sentence and 2 CLTs that are 8. And I'm going to take you through what all of these things mean. So in a topic sentence, it is the first sentence of your body paragraph. The first sentence of the body paragraph must tell the reader which subpoint from the thesis you are writing about in this body paragraph and what are you asserting. So you have to take your subpoint from the thesis, either the X, the A, or the B, right? Just one, because that's what your body paragraph is going to focus on, is that one subpoint. And then what's the assertion? Is it similarities, differences? Is it continuity or changes? Is it causes or effects? And we're going to look at a sample here in a second. So the first sentence of every body paragraph needs to tell the reader which subpoint you're writing about and what is the argument. Then you have to give me at least 2 pieces of information, CLTs, capital letter terms, events, people, laws, cases, policies, CLTs, and you're going to APE them. Remember this acronym APE, right? So for each CLT, you are going to assert the CLT, introduce the CLT as a cause, a similarity or difference, or continuity or change. So you're basically just asserting which CLT you're going to talk about that's going to defend your assertion. Then you are going to prove that you know the CLT by fully defining it, needing a full definition to prove that you know what the CLT means. And then for explain, you have to explain how the CLT relates to the subpoint and is a cause, a comparison, or a continuity or change. So with the explanation, you have to connect it back to your subpoint, right? Tell me, why is this term about this subpoint? But then you also have to tell me, how is this a cause to something? Or how is this a similarity, difference, continuity, or change? Now, oftentimes for comparison and continuity and change, all the explanation happens after you have done the A and the P for both CLTs. And this kind of just makes sense because you can't explain how something is similar until you have given me another CLT. So for a comparison or continuity and change, you normally assert the CLT, give me the definition. Assert another CLT, give me the definition, and then all the explanation will take place about how this is a similarity or a difference, how is this a continuity or a change. So with APE, you are doing 2 CLTs and going through this acronym to build your body paragraph. And that's basically your body paragraph. 1 topic sentence, which subpoint are you writing about? 2 CLTs, fully aped. Okay, so we're going to look at an example from your writing guide. Your writing guide has the first page, the prompt, is to evaluate the extent to which Britain's new imperial policies after 1763 created political, economic, and social conflict that resulted in the American War for Independence. So this is how the British policies caused the American War for Independence. It is a causation. Notice the prompt has 3 topics. It is requiring you to have 3 specific topics: political, economic, and social. But again, we need to make them better, right? We're not just going to settle for political causes, economic causes, social causes. We are going to make those subpoints stronger. So let's look at the introduction paragraph that we have on the writing guide for you. This is the intro paragraph that we are going to use to build our body paragraphs. So remember, the first sentence of an intro should be a setting. What is happening? When is it happening? By 1776, the American colonists formally declared independence from Great Britain after a decade of increased frustrations and tensions. Next, we need context. We need a CLT. These tensions developed after the French and Indian War. That's our context. But now we need to define it. The French and Indian War was fought from 1754 to 1763 over a territorial dispute of the Ohio River Valley between the French and the English colonists. Okay? Now we need to start connecting. How did the French and Indian War have any connection to the American Revolution, right? Why is it the French and Indian War relevant to the American Revolution? However, after the British victory in the French and Indian War, the British became more restrictive and controlling over the colonists, which ultimately led the American colonists to declare independence and the American Revolution. So we made that connection that the French and Indian War leads to restrictions that leads to the revolution. So now we have the thesis. Although restrictive economic burdens by England were a cause of the American Revolution, the revolution was primarily caused by threats to colonial liberty and new political philosophies and ideologies. In a causation thesis, that therefore that assertion is not necessarily needed. You definitely can get by with just having your subpoints, because we're basically arguing the primary causes were the threats to colonial liberty and new political philosophies. Okay, so you don't necessarily need a therefore statement or an assertion with your causation, because it's basically already implied in this thesis. So we are going to go through the intro, and I basically color-coded this intro with the same highlighted sentences so you can match which sentence goes with which skill on the body paragraph, okay? So for our first sentence, it has to be the topic sentence. Which subpoint are you talking about? What are you asserting? Okay, the American Revolution was primarily caused by threats to colonial liberty. This is the A subpoint, right? You're basically just restating the thesis, but getting rid of the other 2 subpoints. So we have the cause, right? The American Revolution was primarily caused. That's your assertion. Your subpoint is threats to colonial liberty. So now we need to assert a CLT, basically saying a CLT caused these threats, right? Caused the American Revolution. After 1763, England began enforcing control over the colonists' lives by using the Quartering Act. So we have this introduction, this assertion of the Quartering Act. Now we have to prove that we know what the Quartering Act is. We have to prove it with a definition. The Quartering Act required colonial governments to provide barracks and supplies for British troops in America. E, explain how the Quartering Act is a threat to colonial liberty and caused the American Revolution. The colonists viewed this law as a threat to personal liberty, since it was a burden placed on colonists' livelihood, and their freedoms at home was taken away. So that connected it to the subpoint, but now we have to explain how this is going to end up causing the revolution. These tensions will lead to the colonists declaring war because colonists will defend their personal liberties. So we just aped one CLT. Now we need to ape a second CLT. Another law that restricted personal liberty was the Proclamation of 1763. Let's prove that we know what the 1763 proclamation actually was. The king refused colonists to move to newly won territory west of the Appalachian Mountains because of native threats. Now we have to explain, how is the Proclamation of 1763 a threat to colonial liberty and caused the American Revolution? However, the colonists saw this law as a violation of personal freedom to seek opportunity west and will lead towards independence to fight for personal liberties. And then the last sentence, it's always nice to kind of just sum up, right? Have just like a concluding sentence. Both of these laws that threaten personal liberties were primary causes that resulted in the colonists declaring war. So it's kind of just reiterating your topic sentence, right? So this was a body paragraph for subpoint A. Now I'm going to take you through body paragraph for subpoint B. On the writing guide, you are going to be required to write the body paragraph for subpoint A, or subpoint X, subpoint X, the economic burdens, okay? So we did A, now we're gonna practice part B, and then on the writing guide, you are going to do subpoint X, the economic burden. So with practice, we have our thesis here, and we have our thesis and introduction all right here for y'all, okay? And so we're going to see how the practice, I'm going to go ahead and write in for with you as we go through and talk about subpoint B. So with subpoint B, you are going to have to think about new political philosophies and ideologies. So the first sentence is always a topic sentence, right? We have to bring in the subpoint and we have to bring in the assertion. So we just simply say, right, this is the last paragraph. Another major cause of the American Revolution, right, this is the assertion, was new political philosophies and ideologies. So we're literally just reiterating the assertion, cause of the American Revolution, and we're just copying and pasting, right? Don't change the subpoint, just leave it as it is, okay? So now we need to introduce a CLT. And thinking about philosophy, ideology, the way people think, definitely without a doubt, one of the big movements that caused people to change the way they think was the Enlightenment. So we can just simply say the Enlightenment began in Europe, and the ideas transferred to the colonies, right? So we assert that this new movement, this Enlightenment, transferred to the colonies, right? It's going to start changing their ideologies. But now we have to define the Enlightenment. So we can simply just say the Enlightenment was a movement that promoted and justified more government rule by the people, right? Maybe give a little more. And for the government to protect the people, right? There was this new responsibility that people were saying the government had. So we have the assertion of the Enlightenment. We have the proof that we know what the Enlightenment means. Now we have to explain how the Enlightenment is going to cause the American Revolution. So we simply can just say these new philosophies challenged the King of England's authority over the colonists, and this challenge will ultimately lead to the American Revolution. All right, having to explain that this movement is going to challenge the king, and that's going to cause the American Revolution. So now we have to ape another CLT, thinking about a term that maybe changed people's ideas, changed people's attitudes, changed the way people thought. And we can definitely use another new ideology that will promote independence. was common sense, right? Common sense totally changed people's attitudes and ideas about the king. So again, we're asserting the common sense is going to promote independence, that common sense is going to cause independence. But now we have to define common sense. So we can simply say common sense was written by Thomas Paine and argued that reconciliation with the king was impossible. We can even say, and that independence was the only solution, right? So we're giving a good definition about what common sense said. But now we need to explain how this new idea is going to cause the revolution. So this new ideology, don't worry about being repetitive. If you're repeating philosophy and ideology over and over, it's because you're talking about that subpoint, and that is totally fine. This new ideology swept across the colonies, and colonists began to push for independence. We can think about how, it's a new ideology, so we're showing that assertion, that explanation, and then we're also explaining how it's pushing for independence, right? And then we can just sum it up. Through the Enlightenment and common sense, these new philosophies and ideologies, ultimately, still can't spell, ideologies ultimately led to the American War for Independence. Okay, so then we have subpoint B done. So from this, on this video, you have an example from subpoint A. You have an example for subpoint B. On your writing guide, you are having to do subpoint X, economic burdens. Okay, so through an intro paragraph, remember that you always are going to have to follow the same structure. It's very formulaic. You just stick to the structure. One topic sentence that gives me what subpoint you're doing and gives me the assertion. Is it a cause? Is it a similarity? Is it a difference? Continuity or change? 2 CLTs that are fully asserted, defined with your proof, and explained how your CLT links to your subpoint and links to your assertion. Okay, you are having to prove how something caused an event, how something is similar or different, and how something is a continuity or a change. So when you're practicing on your writing guide, obviously coming to FIT and asking in class, we are going to build on this skill throughout this unit. All right, thank you all. I hope this was helpful.